Most people think the problem is their paycheck. Not enough money coming in, that's it, that's the whole story. But what if that's not really the problem? What if that's just what shows up on the surface, while the real issue is hiding somewhere else? There's a verse in Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 11, that says something like this: "Money that comes fast tends to disappear fast, but money that grows little by little tends to keep growing." Now stick with me here, because in my view, this one verse might explain why so many people feel stuck no matter how much they earn. And I want to walk through this together, not as some final answer, but as a way of thinking that's worth considering. Because here's the thing. The paycheck trap doesn't start on payday. It starts way before that, in the way we think about money in the first place. So let's slow down for a second. What do we even mean by the paycheck trap? A lot of people assume it just means not making enough money. But if that were true, then everyone with a big salary would feel totally free, right? And that's just not what we see. You've probably met someone who makes really good money and somehow is still stressed out every single month. Still waiting for that next payday like it's a lifeline. Still one surprise bill away from panic. So maybe the real trap isn't the amount of money. Maybe the real trap is depending completely on the next paycheck just to keep your head above water. No space. No breathing room. Just work, get paid, spend it, and start the clock again. And when someone lives like that for years, it can create this constant low-level worry. A kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with how many hours you worked and everything to do with never feeling settled. That, in my perspective, is the real trap. Not the number on the paycheck. The complete dependence on it. Now let's go back to that verse for a moment. Money gained fast tends to shrink. Money gathered slowly tends to grow. Historically, this kind of wisdom shows up again and again in the Bible. It's not really about being rich or poor. It's more about how something is built. Quick money, whether it's a lucky break, a shortcut, or something that skips the process, often doesn't stick around very long. There's no root to it. But money that grows slowly, built through steady effort and patience, tends to last. It has a foundation. And I think it's worth asking, why would this pattern show up so consistently? One way to look at it is that steady growth usually comes with steady habits. You learn along the way. You build discipline without even noticing it. So when the money grows, the person growing it has usually grown too. Quick money often skips that whole process. So even if the money shows up, the habits and mindset needed to keep it never really developed. That might be one reason this pattern keeps repeating throughout history, in different cultures, in different times. Let's talk about the mindset that tends to keep the cycle going, because I think this is where things get really personal. First, there's the habit of living only for the next payday. Not really thinking past it. Just surviving one cycle at a time. Then there's spending everything that comes in. Not necessarily on anything wild, sometimes it's just everyday stuff, but the money leaves as fast as it arrives. There's also this pull toward quick fixes. A get-rich-fast idea. A shortcut that promises to solve everything overnight. And maybe the biggest one, believing that just one raise, one bonus, one lucky break will finally fix everything. But often, when that raise comes, spending just grows right along with it, and the same stress shows back up a few months later. And underneath all of that, there's usually one missing piece, never really learning how to manage money at all. Nobody sat down and explained it. So people just keep repeating the same patterns they grew up watching. Put those things together, and you get a cycle that feeds itself. Not because someone is careless or lacks intelligence, but because nobody ever showed them a different way to think about it. So how could a verse like this actually change anything? Let's break it into a few practical ideas, again, just as a perspective worth trying. 1. Building things gradually instead of chasing a big jump all at once. Small steady steps tend to hold up better over time. 2. Developing some kind of financial discipline. Not extreme, just consistent. A little bit of planning goes a long way. 3. Actually valuing small progress. Even tiny steps forward count for something, even when they don't feel exciting in the moment. 4. Being cautious around promises of instant wealth. If something skips the whole process entirely, it might be worth a second look before jumping in. 5. Learning some basic money management, the kind the Bible talks about again and again, being a good steward of what you already have. And 6. Trusting that things will work out while still doing your part. Not sitting back and waiting for everything to fall into place, but also not carrying all the weight alone either. None of this promises instant results. But little by little, it might shift the whole pattern. Interestingly, this idea shows up in other places in the Bible too, not just this one verse. Proverbs 21:5 talks about the plans of the diligent leading to profit, while rushing tends to lead to lack. Luke 16:10 mentions that whoever is faithful with very little will also be faithful with much. Proverbs 22:7 brings up how the borrower ends up serving the lender, which is a pretty direct way of describing what debt can feel like. And Ecclesiastes 11:2 talks about spreading things out, not putting everything into one single basket. Put all of that together, and a pattern starts to form. It's less about waiting for a miracle and more about steady, thoughtful management, over and over again. Now, maybe you're listening to this and thinking, that's nice, but I still have a normal paycheck and normal bills. How does any of this actually apply to me? Fair question. So here are a few small shifts worth considering. Start by tracking where money actually goes, even just for a month. Most people are surprised by what they find. Try setting aside a small amount regularly, even if it feels too small to matter. The habit matters more than the number at first. Pause before quick spending decisions, especially the ones driven by stress or boredom rather than an actual need. And maybe most important, shift the way you think about money before expecting the amount of money to change. In my view, that mindset shift tends to come first, and the results tend to follow after. None of these steps are dramatic. But according to this way of thinking, small consistent choices tend to add up to something bigger over time. So let's bring this back together. The paycheck trap, at least from this perspective, doesn't really start with a number on your paycheck. It starts earlier than that, in the way money gets viewed and handled day to day. And that one verse, money gained fast disappears fast, but money gathered slowly keeps growing, offers a way of thinking that might help break that cycle, one small step at a time. This isn't a guaranteed formula, and it's definitely not the only way to look at it. But it's worth sitting with for a moment. So maybe take a minute after this and just look honestly at how you're handling things right now. Not to judge yourself, just to notice. Because sometimes that small moment of noticing is exactly where change quietly begins.